We're gonna ask folks to, we're in Zoom video, but if you would turn your cameras off and make sure you're viewing all of us who are pinned in terms of speaker view, then you'll see all of us. I'm very excited for this conversation. So let's give it about 30 seconds more, and then we will jump into our content for today's session. All right, so we're recording, we're good. Okay. In about 25 seconds, we'll be starting. Okay. As all of you are joining at this time, put yourself so you see speaker view for what you're looking at, and you should see all of us as panelists pinned to your screen. And in order to sort of not distract, if you would take your cameras or your video off, that would be helpful. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Personal Branding in a Virtual Landscape. This is brought to you by the Belonging Project. Very happy to be here and tell you a little bit about the Belonging Project. The Belonging Project is a collaboration between law firms, legal departments, legal organizations, law schools, and consulting groups brought together at the catalyst of the pandemic, really to support law students and attorneys of color in what was looking to be, and it actually turned out to be very much an impactful time, very much reflecting what happened in 2008, and wanted to have a support structure that existed in order to help with professional development, education, and other places of resources for this cohort. It's been a very successful endeavor. I'm very happy to be collaborating as a partner. And if you have more questions about the Belonging Project, please do visit safeart.com/belonging project for additional information. And let's go ahead and get started. So what are we doing here? Why personal branding? What's this all about? What does a good consultant do? She shows you a deck. So let me show you that deck, and then we will start this conversation. I am Paula Edgar, and many of you have had the opportunity to see me speak before, but I'm very excited because it's not me speaking, it's my people speaking about the things that they have done when it comes to branding. And I think the power of that is so very, very, very wonderful. So take a look at who we have. Our panelists today are Nasa Alcina, Roy D. Pratt III, Stephanie Marone, and Sonia Sohm, and I'll be getting to them for introductions shortly. But I thought we should start with a reflection on where we are. We're still in the middle of a global pandemic. Thankfully, getting better. Thankfully, hopefully on our way out of it and getting to whatever the new normal is going to be. But no matter what, I think we realize that that new normal includes us being in a virtual landscape, whether that's fully virtual, hybrid, or whatever that is going to be as we go forward, that being in these windows and figuring out how we're going to navigate our brand and who we are is going to be a part of our new toolkit. And so we have to think about best practices and things that we're going to do in order to support that process. So throughout today's session, I'm going to ask you if you have questions, and you can send it to us via the chat. You can chat to the host, you can chat directly to me with your questions, and I will be sending those questions and circulating them to the panelists. We have a significant amount of time at the end of our conversation, the questions that I have, to take your questions, and you'll be directing them to me, and I'll remind you about that again. Today's session is certified for CLE for those of you who are currently attorneys. I'll be giving you a code at the end of the session that you'll be able to utilize to get CLE credit. Next up, what is personal branding? So I pulled two definitions because I thought, let's just look at how it's been sort of phrased a couple ways, and then think about that as we're having our conversation. So first is personal branding is a conscious and intentional effort to create and influence public perception of an individual by positioning them as an authority in their industry, elevating their credibility, and differentiating themselves from the competition to ultimately advance their career, increase their circle of influence, and have a larger impact. That is from the Sage Wikipedia. Here's another description that I thought was an excellent one. There you go. Personal brand is the unique combination of skills and experiences that make you who you are. It is how you present yourself to the world. Effective personal branding will differentiate you from the competition and allow you to build trust with prospective clients and employers. And that's from an article from Forbes magazine, which will be circulated to you in the resources for today's session as well. In thinking about some of the things that are in your branding toolkit, which we'll be reflecting on today, I thought it'd be helpful to maybe have a quick list, and you can think about other things that maybe are not in there that you want to amplify, develop, etc., as we're having our conversation, and ask specific questions about strategy and things that you would like to know from our panelists. What's on that toolkit? Baseline excellent work product. That should be your goal. Whatever you do, however you do it, it should be done with excellence in mind. As our goal. Your headshot, your bio, right? What are you doing? How are you presenting yourself externally? Do you not have one of these? And if so, why not? Your resume or CV, if you're looking for a role, if you're trying to be on a board, et cetera, you have to have something that shows what you've done and how you've done it. Your elevator pitch, how do you introduce yourself? Who are you? How do you add value? Your LinkedIn, which we'll talk about significantly today, and other social media profiles. Your organizational affiliation, that includes where you work if you work for someone else, as well as any boards or any other things that you're involved in. And then of course, your network and your sphere of influence. And that's something that we'll be talking about because that's a really huge part of how you develop and build your brand. And so with that, I'm going to stop sharing and get to our panelists and have them introduce themselves. And I'm going to start with Neysa. Neysa, who are you? And how would you describe your brand in 3 words or phrases?
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Paula, for this opportunity, and Seyfarth Shah for having us, and all of you for tuning in. My name is Neysa Alsina, and I am the General Counsel and Deputy Comptroller for Legal Affairs for the New York City Comptroller Scott M. Stringer. The Office of the General Counsel supports all aspects of the office with legal support, particularly audit, the settlement of all claims for and against the City of New York, the setting of prevailing wages for public works, as well as the Bureau of Asset Management, which currently has about $240 billion under management. That's who I am today in my day job. 3 ways that I describe myself in terms of my personal brand are, bar association leader. I have been very actively involved in multiple bar associations. I was formerly the counsel to the city bar, as well as the regional president of the Hispanic National Bar and other diverse bars. The second way that I brand myself is something that I care about deeply, which is mentoring youth. And so in that regard, I make sure to get involved with organizations that provide opportunities to youth, such as the Sonia and Selena Sotomayor Judicial Internship Program, and currently the Education Committee Chair for the National Puerto Rican Day Parade. And the third way that I believe I have a personal brand is something that is very personal to me, and which is Puerto Rico. And the unfair treatment of the colony, and many of the things that we can do to raise awareness about the relationship between the United States and the island. And so those are the 3 things that describe who I am. Thank you, Paula.
Love it. Thanks, Neysa. Stephanie, you're up next. Tell me who you are and describe your brand in 3 words or phrases.
Thank you. So sorry, I was dealing with my dogs just ate a crayon. And this is what life is like now, working from home. So that was lovely. I'm Stephanie Marone. I have worked in legal marketing for about 20 years. I was in-house at a number of big law firms, and then was at a mid-sized firm as the head of marketing for 3 years. I went off on my own in October of 2019 to start my own consulting practice. And that's been really great. And what I do now is work with law firms mostly, and companies and organizations that support mostly law firms. And I serve as outsourced CMO for a number of them. I do social media consulting. I work with my clients' clients as well. And it's been really interesting. It was not a path I had planned on, becoming an entrepreneur. I thought I'd work for law firms forever. And in terms of my personal brand, even before I started my own business, people were asking me if I was doing this kind of thing because I was always building my brand on LinkedIn. And I had always sort of struggled with the idea of like, how much was I supposed to be sharing in terms of my own content and then in terms of my employer's content. I have always been an early adopter of LinkedIn, primarily other social channels for personal reasons, but I had been speaking and writing and doing all of those things and finding employers that allowed me to do those things, which was important to me. And I have a blog, and I had started the blog while I was still in house as the head of marketing. It's called the Social Media Butterfly Blog, and feel free to check it out. And so I had kept that blog and had developed, a little bit of a modest following doing that. And a lot of the content then I posted on my LinkedIn. So when I went off on my own, it wasn't as hard as I thought it might be because I had built up a follower base, and I had been posting the content and speaking and doing all those things, which is part of what we'll talk about today in terms of building your brand before you even think you'll need it, because you never know where your career will take you. And I also, have done other things in terms of being an advocate, hopefully for women. I started this initiative called Women Who Wow, and some of you who may be interested in that, you can find out about it on my blog. But it is something I started in terms of just highlighting women and what they're doing, giving us a platform to shine, spotlight on the different great advice that we all have for each other. And I think that's it. A lot of people know my dogs, and so I'm okay with being branded by being a, kind of a dog mom too. And I think that makes us a little more personal nowadays too, which I like.
Thanks, Stephanie. And next up is Roy. Tell me about who you are, how you add value, and your brand in 3 words or phrases.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Before I introduce myself, I'll just address the elephant in the room. I am speaking to you from my vehicle in a very 2021 moment. My laptop died, and my kids were unexpectedly home from daycare today and decided to time their meltdown right around the time I was supposed to be speaking with you. So I had to seek asylum in my vehicle to make sure I would be uninterrupted while we spoke. So thank you for accepting me as I am. And I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I am a partner at the law firm Beveridge and Diamond, which is the oldest and largest law firm dedicated to the practice of environmental law. I have been with that firm for about 6 years, started my career at a larger law firm for 5 in Philadelphia. And my practice is entirely focused on environmental law, primarily litigation, defending industry and municipal entities in various enforcement and class action and other litigation. Now, in terms of my personal brand, the 3 words/phrases I would say, first, genuine. Every person that I interact with, my goal is to always give of myself as I am and accept people as they are. I think that's a very important part of making sure the connections you make with people are significant. The second part of that, I would say, is invested in my community, and that's every community of which I'm a part. So the legal community, very much invested in the mentoring of attorneys, young attorneys, also being a resource to peers as they make their way through this industry. And in particular for me, Black lawyers in big law firms. I work with Paula and others with an organization called the Black Big Law Pipeline, specifically geared towards providing tools, mentoring, and resources to Black attorneys who are in the big law space and providing ways for them to make the most of those opportunities. And lastly, I would just say committed. I don't mean that as me, I mean that for anyone who I engage with. So excellence on the things that I'm involved in, but also contributing to people being excellent in whatever way I can collaborate. So looking forward to sharing more with all of you.
And Roy, so the car situation got a little choppy just now. So if it does, I'll let you know again, so you can just go off of camera so that it's not pulling as much data, and so that your sound is clear. But thank you for that, and thank you for your vulnerability, and my empathy is with you, but at least it's hopefully warm where you are. So, and last but not least Sonia Soam, tell us about who you are, how you add value, and 3 words or phrases about your brand.
Thanks so much, Paula. I really appreciate you inviting me to participate in this conversation. Thank you to Corey Carew and Seyfarth and the Belonging Project, which is just such an excellent resource for all of us these days. So my name is Sonia Oldsoam. I'm a partner at Heidrick & Struggles, executive search and consulting firm. I am based in Chicago. I have been an executive search consultant or recruiter or headhunter, if you will, for a little over 10 years now. I focus primarily on general counsel and deputy general counsel searches, but also conduct board searches and other C-suite searches and do diversity and inclusion consulting as well. I've been with Heidrick for about 2 years now. Before that, I was with another legal search firm, Boutique, for about 9 years. And then before that, I practiced law for a little over 10 years. I was a labor and employment and immigration lawyer at various law firms and was a law firm partner. So very pleased to be here and talk a little bit about my perspective, both as someone who's been a practicing lawyer and sort of worked my way up through the ranks to make partner through personal branding and networks, and then started all over again 10 years ago as a recruiter and built back up again. How I think I would try to describe myself is as a connector. It's been said to me often that there are basically 2 different kinds of people in the legal industry. There are people who know me and people who don't know me, and it's a rapidly dwindling bucket, the people who don't know me. Try to add value however I can in advising people on their career paths, not just actually placing them in jobs. I wish I had a job for everyone, but connecting people to various resources to help them grow their professional brands and networks and advance their careers.
Perfect and wonderful. Thank you, Sonia, for that. And I see, Whitney, I see your commentary. And so everyone who is on, I want to just do a check real quick because I'm going to ask you all to utilize the chat function to message me if you have questions throughout this process. So why don't you just directly to me, so drop down so you see my name, hit and tell me hi. I want to see a bunch of highs in the chat so I know that it's working. Okay, perfect. Excellent, good. All right, I trust the internet again. We're back aligned and perfect. Roy, we had a request for you to repeat your last branding element. Are you ready to do that?
Sure, yes. Can you hear me now, Paula? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, the last one was committed to excellence. And I said before that doesn't mean just excellence personally, but also excellence for everyone who I engage with, and however I can contribute to that excellence is something that I focus my efforts on.
Thank you very much. And I'm glad that you all asked for the repeat because it needed to be heard. And so I'll just tell you a little bit about myself before we jump into the questions. So I'm Paula Edgar. I am a diversity and inclusion consultant, a professional development consultant as well. I have my own business, PGE Consulting Group, LLC. I have worked for 3 different law schools. I have been the chief diversity officer. I have been the president of the Black Bar Association. I'm going to be a member of the board of directors of the New York City Bar Association. I'm currently on 6 different boards of directors. Clearly, I don't sleep. I have 2 children. I have 1 husband for now. If he keeps it up in the pandemic, we should be fine. And I love Prince, and I love professional development. And I love people who are passionate about what they do. And I believe branding is the key to all things. My mother said to me when I was very young and throughout my whole life that you can either be the wind or you can be the leaf. And really that is the content of our conversation today, is you being strategic about branding and being the wind in your career. And so with that, my 3 words are engaging, passionate, and fun. And I know that's not as specific as you'd like, but that I think are the 3 words that really define me in terms of my brand. And we can do sub bullets on that if you'd like. Today, we are going to be talking about a lot of different things. One thing I will encourage you to do is to build your brand by sharing what you've learned. So for today's session, if you see and hear something that you like and you want to share, use that social media, right? Let's get into the doing of the things while we're doing the things. So we encourage you to follow and check and tag and do all those things and say fun things that we've said, as long as they are fun things and not things that are not fun, we should be fine. So I'm going to jump into the questions and we're going to you first. Roy, are there particular skills, traits, or characteristics that you have focused on developing over the course of your career?
Certainly, yes. And I think that the first one, Paula, you already mentioned, which is just commitment to excellent work product, right? That's kind of just the baseline for everyone, I would think, no matter what you're doing. But in addition to that, it's finding a way to add value. So the skill set that I've had to develop personally, it just depended on who I was working with, and it's varied over time, but the approach is the same. What is it that is needed in the organization or with the people you work with, and what can you bring to the table to make their lives easier and to contribute to success, which goes back to that whole commitment to excellence thing that I mentioned before. And now I've transitioned into a new position where I am more so supervising people as opposed to supporting them. And although that's the case, it's still the same dynamic because I have clients that I directly deal with who I am trying to figure out the way to essentially make their lives easier and solve those problems for them. And so the skill set was really just interrogating that, not just focusing on the work that you need to do, but why are you doing the work? How does it help? So that you can better position yourself as you go on to make things easier for whoever it is that you're doing that work with or for.
Love that. Sonia, talk to me about particular skills, traits, or characteristics that you focus on developing.
No, I think Roy is spot on, and I won't just, piggyback off of what he said. But, the watchword I always give is to, focus on the give and the get will follow. I think people think too linearly. They think too transactionally. I've talked to so many law firm lawyers who say, marketing and branding doesn't work. I went on LinkedIn one time and I never got any business from it. And it's like, okay, well, when was that one time you went on LinkedIn? It was like last week. They went on one time and money did not just fall out of the sky right afterwards. And so they decided that the whole exercise was an exercise in futility. And so I think you have to sort of take the long view of relationships, the relationship with yourself first and foremost, and developing your brand and who you are and what you want to stand for. And then the relationship with other people, thinking about how you can give to others. Don't worry about what you can get from them. Think about how you can help them, how you can take who you are and put that of service to other people. And then over time, you will find that I believe the universe will return things to you tenfold.
So you mean there's not money that's going to fall from the LinkedIn sky? Because
I mean, if there is, LinkedIn is branding all wrong, because they should probably lead with that. But in the years that I've been on LinkedIn, I've not seen any money directly fall from the sky. But what I have seen is that you post something in, 2002, which causes you to meet a person in 2005, which causes you to speak on a panel in 2008, and yada, yada, yada. In 2017, now this great thing happens. So it's not, I think we struggle as lawyers because it's not that direct path. It's not study for the bar, take the bar, pass the bar, bill the hours, make your hours. It's meet a person who introduces you to a person, and then you went to a thing, and then later it all comes together. So it's a different way of thinking about things.
it is the strategy of the long game. Neysa, talk to me about the skills and traits and characteristics that you focus on developing.
Absolutely. So I focus on three primarily. One is communication skills. The second one is project management skills. And the third is leadership skills. And what's interesting is that I have developed these traits and these skills primarily through my volunteer work. I've learned so much through Bar Association, projects, programs that we've put together, causes that we need to push. And all of those skills that I've learned in my volunteer roles, I've been able to further enhance and further come in with more confidence throughout each of the jobs that I've held. So I would say that those are the three primary skills that I focused on in my career that have helped me.
Stephanie, talk to me about the skills, characteristics, and traits that you focus on developing.
Yeah, so for me, it has been building a brand on LinkedIn. It has been giving content away and being helpful. So to piggyback on what Sonia said, some people worry about how much they should give away on LinkedIn, worrying that maybe it's too much information and then someone won't need them, but that's not the case. I always say, be as helpful as possible, be authentic, be useful to people, provide value. And I have yes, I agree that like conversations will happen and we may not see direct correlation between a post that you make and a piece of business or a speaking engagement or whatever it is. You also have to determine what it is that you want. Is it a higher profile with your brand, or is it actual leads? There's two sides, there's marketing and business development. So you have to decide what it is that you want to do. For me, when I was in-house working as a marketer, it was branding for myself. It was, more speaking engagements. It was article opportunities. And now it's that, but it's also more business. But I can tell you that I've gotten, and I know Paula, you and I have spoken about this, you and I have both gotten new business based on posts that we have made, or the credentialing of someone seeing that we speak at something like this, that someone says, oh, they must know their stuff. And this happens with lawyers over and over again. I've had clients of mine, lawyers with whom I work, get a piece of business based on the fact that they're speaking at a PLI program or something prestigious. So for me, it's been producing content that I know my followers care about, and not also being a prisoner to metrics. So I don't look at the likes, comments, and shares all the time. I look at other things that tell me whether or not my content is actually doing well, right? So Sonia also said you have to be consistent. Consistency is key, right? If you're going to do social media, do it, show up, be consistent, because you won't be successful. LinkedIn's algorithm won't reward you for that. The other thing is that I use speaking. So, I've had to pivot just like a lot of us have. I loved speaking in person because there's nothing better than connecting with someone in the audience, but I've been able to be much more flexible now. So I do things like this. Speaking is something I love to do. And I said that I was going to, that was going to be one of my tenets for building my brand. So that's something I have done for many years. You may not like public speaking. And I always say to push yourself to do something you don't like, because I find once you get over it, it's not as scary as it was. But if you don't like public speaking, you can write or do other things or buddy up with someone like we're doing here, so it seems less formidable. But that has helped for me. And writing, like I said, has been also something that I love to do. So I use my blog and I write for JD Supra. So for any of you out there who want to write, third-party contributed articles are a great place, right? So JD Supra, even law.com, the Mid-Market Report, the New York Law Journal, Law 360 is a little harder, but they will take content. And actually, if you guys want to write for my blog, contact me, but you have to send me a message through LinkedIn. They're taking content and it's free to you. So I always say, you never know until you ask. So I've always had a little more gumption to ask for things and submit yourself as a speaker. I don't know anything more than any of you do. I just ask for things. So I would just say, put yourself out there. What's the worst they could say? No. But by the way, someone is going to say yes. And buddy up with really smart people like these guys. Whenever I really want to do something, I invoke Paula, and I usually get selected.
I invoke Paula. Here I am. You know what? I realized as I listened to the conversation, because I'm all in, I thought to myself, what if folks who are on here are like, I'm sorry, what is this LinkedIn that you are discussing? What is this social of the media that you're referring to? And so I wanted to do a little backtrack and just get into some baseline and then jump back into the questions. Number one, when it comes to branding, is really assessment, right? It's really, where are you right now? Do you have an idea of what your personal brand is, how you in fact add value, and some of those key things that I talked about in your brand toolkit, do you actually have them? And if you don't, that is where you should start. That's where the strategy should be. Who am I and how I add value? And I actually love doing this as a consultant, to say, sit down and write 5 statements about how you add value. This is my role. This is what I do. These are, the skill sets that I have. This is my expertise. And if you find I'm only at like a 3.5, 3.5, or like a 2.7 in my list, I have work to do, right? There's places and spaces for me to be able to do a little bit better, or to amplify, or to additionally add things there. But you give yourself a core. Like, don't start with just, I just want to do better. the more you write and figure out the actual thing that's there now, the better it is for you to be able to say assessing, and now I'm going to set goals for what's next. And the interesting part about this, particularly for lawyers and law students, is that we're not really taught to sort of sit and set goals. We're not taught to sort of sit and assess, not in a constructive way in my mind, but that's a whole nother story in another webinar. But if you think about this, the process of these webinars for this week and next week is about business development. And if you're thinking, well, I don't have a business yet, you absolutely do. It's the business of you, right? What is your business? How do you sell whatever you have internally, externally, et cetera? That's what we're talking about. And so I want you to think, and you're sitting there writing down, I know that you're making this a working thing, literally write down, who am I and how do I add value? Start with 5 different statements that you're going to put down. And then if you feel like there's some stuff lagging, what are we going to do? How are we going to figure this out to make this a little bit better? And that's a part of what you'll be hearing from the panelists talking about in the part of our conversations. And I'm going to be, I think we already circulated. If you haven't gotten already, there's a list of resources that we put together for today's panel that'll help you with some additional things as well. Okay, now let's jump back into the questions. And like I mentioned, if you have questions or comments throughout this, just send them and I'll incorporate them into the conversation. So I think we combine both the questions about what are the skills and how have you used it to shape your brand, but I'll just open it up to folks and I'll start with Sonia. If you want to amplify or add anything else about how the development of those skills and traits have helped you to shape your personal brand.
Right. So you said when you listed at the beginning, Paula, here the sort of the toolkit, the things you should be thinking about. Importantly, the number one thing you listed is that you have to be excellent. You got to be good at what you do. You know, we're lawyers. We're hopefully not snake oil salesmen. We should be trying to market and brand something that people want and that people need. And people always need good quality consultation, good quality advice, good quality relationships. So before you start thinking about how you pretty it up, you're not an Instagram model, you're a lawyer. First and foremost, focus on the substance, learn your craft, get good, develop a reputation for doing good work and being on time and being polite. Frankly, your work product is business development in and of itself. So talking from my own experience, as I mentioned in my introduction, I spent the first half of my career practicing law as a labor and employment and immigration lawyer. And so everything I did, sort of coming up through the law firms, was basically trying to remind people that I practice labor and employment and immigration law. And that if you could remember nothing else about me, remember that I'm a good labor and employment lawyer, I'm a good immigration lawyer. And if you can only remember one person who does that, remember that it's me. So when I thought about, social media, and I got on social media when I was pregnant with my son and was confined to bed rest. And that's when I joined everything, MySpace, remember that, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. I joined everything at that point because I was in bed for like 2 months. And so I was very conscious of, being sort of on brand. I made sure to connect with other labor and employment and immigration lawyers, in-house, law firm, government. I shared content about the areas that I was interested in and that I wanted to be considered an expert in, not just the things I wrote myself, but that other people wrote. Again, I wasn't trying to boil the ocean. I wasn't trying to have everyone remember a million things about me. If you only could remember that I was an immigration lawyer and you remembered nothing else about me, that's fine. And it didn't even matter if you remembered what specific area of immigration law I specialized in, because if someone reached out to me looking for an immigration lawyer, if I wasn't the right one for them, I would turn them over to another immigration lawyer in my network, and they would do the same thing for me. I pride myself on someone comes to me with a question. I may not be the one with the answer, but I will try to figure out who the person is who does have the answer and connect you to that person. So again, just being very focused on this is what I'm good at. This is what I want to be known for. And I spent over 10 years in organizations and writing articles and speaking on panels. Immigration, right? That was over 10 years ago. I then pivoted and I went into search. And so I made a very conscious effort to start, connecting with other search professionals and talking about, recruiting and talking about careers in recruiting and writing articles and speaking on panels and speaking to the press and, and really sort of trying to turn the boat around slowly over the course of the last decade. Interestingly enough, at least once a week, someone reaches out to me saying, I have an immigration case and I haven't practiced immigration law in over 10 years, but you know what? I refer them to, I say, tell me what your case is, and I refer them to who I think the immigration lawyer is, who would be able to help them. So again, it's about being sort of conscious of what you want people to remember about you. We all know a lot of people, and you can't remember every detail about everyone. And so you really want to sort of think high level. What are the handful of things that I want people to come to me for? Being an immigration lawyer was very helpful to me in terms of brand building and sort of building that brand of being a connector and being a helpful person, because often I was sort of almost the Statue of Liberty to people. I got people their work permits, I got people their green cards. So the people would say, well, where should I put my kids in school? I need a doctor. How do I get a driver's license? How do I open a bank account? And so I just started keeping a list of these resources all over the country. Here's some good pediatricians, here's some good doctors, here's some good, places to go in terms of restaurants, and in using my network to introduce those people. Again, I don't claim to be an expert at all the things, but I want people to generally think of me as being someone who's helpful that they can come to. And that continues to this day. New general counsels get their positions, whether I place them or not. I send them resources new general counsels should read. New Black woman general counsel moves to Chicago. I say, here's the hairdresser. Again, just being generally helpful to people. And so don't worry about, I think to Stephanie's point, that you're giving away too much for free. It really is, we're all in sort of a try before we buy kind of situation. People want to build relationships with you through not-for-profits, through social media, through all of these different ways. And when it's time to, figure out where the money reside, people go back to the people who they already built a relationship of trust with, because they know you're good and helpful, even when there's no money involved. That makes them think, you know what, you're a good person for me to come back to when there is money involved.
So brand building as essentially is being a resource. So it's not just who you are and what you do, but it's also how you are a resource. And then I think that's a key that all of you have already said in terms of sort of not just showing how I am X, but also it's how I do it, not just what I do. And I think that that's one of the reasons why I wanted all of you to sort of be a part of this, because each of you has your sort of own way of connecting with people and also showing the value propositions and the strategies that you use in order to do so. I'm going to take dealer's choice, and I'm going to skip a question because I want to go to the next question, which is this. Neysa, how important has intentionally developing your professional brand been to your success? And I want to focus on this question and make sure that folks know why I'm asking it in this way. It's this: wind and not the leaf. Strategy versus just letting life happen to you. That's a very different situation. Most people will get there, hopefully, right, if the wheels align. But it's very different to say, I'm going to make it that I get there. And so, Neysa, talk to me about how you've done that.
Okay, thank you. That's an interesting and complex question. And I say that because, look, 1999, I was a paralegal at Merrill Lynch, and I said that one day I would be general counsel. I didn't know how that was going to happen. All I knew is that I put it out there before even understanding the law of attraction, right? And so here I am in 2020, getting the opportunity to be the general counsel to the New York City Comptroller. How I got there was a series of steps that at the moment I didn't realize what I was doing in terms of, step by step. However, I did focus on certain things that, we've already talked about, being excellent in every job that I was in, building relationships, not burning bridges. And so when I went from a law firm to in-house counsel at MetLife, to in-house counsel at Citigroup, to municipal credit union, to then switch to the New York City Bar Association, to then go to Washington, DC to be a senior policy advisor to a congresswoman on Puerto Rico issues, having done all of that helped me become the general counsel that I am today. And where I was intentional was in doing as good a job as I could in each one, taking risks and going with what I felt was the right move for me for the next move, and making sure that I stayed connected with as many people as possible in those previous jobs. So in fact, I wouldn't be in the position that I'm in right now if my former boss didn't forward me that posting. So City Bar, love it. So all I have to say when it comes to being intentional, you may not know exactly where you want to be 21 years later, but you need to make sure that you focus on these things so that you do develop a reputation out there, and you do develop a way that people do see you as a resource and someone who is smart, can do the job, and has a network. And that is worth a lot. And that's why we're here today.
Stephanie, you're up next, and then we're going to go to Roy calling in from the car.
So I've always been intentional about where I wanted to focus. There are a lot of people who do what I do, meaning law firm marketing, right? So back in the early days of social media, I was an early adopter of it. And I mean, I worked at a firm that looked at me and said, why we don't need to use social media. The clients just come to us because we're the best. And I was like, okay, guys, like, so there was a disconnect there. I needed to go find a firm that would, wanted an innovator and that sort of thing. And I was writing about it at a time when not a lot of people were. And I became known, so they say, you can't be everything to everyone. And I agree with that. Just like you wouldn't, as an attorney, you're not going to be a general practitioner, right? You may start out as a first-year associate as one, but then you're going to pick an area, whether it's, trust and estates, employment, corporate, and even in corporate, you'll decide if you want to be an M&A lawyer or you're going to go into securities or whatever it is. So, in what I do, people specialize. So one of the things that's been a little challenging to me, but it is intentional, is that I can do everything under the sun when it comes to marketing. However, a lot of people know me as a social media person. So sometimes I struggle with the idea of like, what do I post and how much of that do I, because I don't want to limit myself to the, to just getting work that is social media related, or having people just put me in a box and think that I am the social media butterfly. That's the name of my blog, by the way. So I purposely post content that is more inclusive of other things of the universe, right? And I said that women's empowerment of women is a very important issue to me. And so I make sure that that's also part of my brand. I also write about personal experiences a lot. And by the way, the posts that do the best for me are the ones, whether or not I'm writing about LinkedIn or tips or business development tips or a career tip, the posts that do the best for me are the ones where I inject a story about something in my life or an experience or whatever it is. I've had a couple posts go viral. And what I mean by viral is they've gotten 20,000 views and like actual viral posts, right? And they've been stories where I faced adversity and I talk about them in a professional way. So there are ways to take dry content and turn it into something that makes you memorable. And if you are uncomfortable doing that, I understand, but storytelling is very important. So I have been intentional about that. And, somebody said to me, you post a lot and you're overexposed. And I said, well, I don't know that you can't actually be overexposed on social right now, because there is no way to make sure that every single person in your network sees all of your posts. There's simply no way. If I could figure that out, I would be a very rich person. So just know that, be true to yourself, be authentic. I mean, people know who I am when you read my posts. If you don't like what I say, you can unsubscribe from me, you can unfollow me. And so I always tell people to just be yourself, and that will help. I mean, and I talked a lot about LinkedIn today. When we go back to reality in the real world, we will be doing in-person networking. We will be building our brand in the other ways, but social is still going to be very much a part of everything that we do, because we have learned, first of all, younger generations use it as part of the fabric of who they are. It's something they grew up with. As our clients get younger and our colleagues get younger, they'll continue to use it. So just know that it's something you can adopt, and it's never too early or late to use it. And also, to Sonia's point, she's completely changed her career path. You never know, just like I have, a lot of us have pivoted. Never know where your career will take you. So always be prepared for that. So you can be intentional, but know that every one of us has a zigzagging career path. So, I liked what Nasa said about not burning bridges too. I have burned bridges. Sometimes it's inevitable, right? Try to not burn the bridges, but you can fix bridges down the line, but know that you just don't know where your career is going to take you. So, but we've got tools now like social that enable you to change your brand.
Which we're going to get into very soon. So Roy,
Yeah.
talk to me about how you have intentionally developed your personal brand.
Sure. So, and I think this applies particularly to people working in law firms, but not just limited there. I focused very heavily on what it was I wanted to project and where I wanted to project it, right? So when I was a young lawyer at a law firm, it was much more important to me to establish my personal brand and reputation among the people that I worked with in the law firm, because those would be the people who promoted me if I was going to become partner in the law firm, right? I could have had exposure to a wide range of folks outside the firm for any number of different things. I was involved with a lot of Affinity Bar Association things. I was involved in a lot of community related organizations and knew a lot of people. But if all of those people loved me and the people at my law firm didn't think of me or didn't know Roy's really great at what he does and has potential to bring business to the firm, then it would not have gotten me to where I needed to be. So early on, I was very focused on identifying who are the people that is important that I know and that know me, who are the people who are doing the work that I find important and valuable and want to get more experience in and learn, and what is the reputation I want to have with those people. And once I was able to focus on that and establish myself there, then it was very easy to branch out, because those people also, by virtue of working with me and having relationships, they have a network too. And they can expose you to other organizations, other opportunities, other people you can meet. And so I kind of was very intentional about establishing that baseline with those folks. And then once I got that, expanding from there and looking, okay, where can I most effectively spend my time in terms of things that I get involved in? And also, what do I want those organizations to think of me as well? You know, some of them, I'm not trying to have them think of me as, you know, the guy that does environmental law, even though that's what most of the time I want people to think of. I just wanted them to think, oh, he's reliable. Oh, I know that if I ask him to do something, it's definitely going to get done, right? That kind of thing. And so that basically became a situation where if there's a potential client down the road that happens to work with someone who's involved in the same organization, and they say, oh, Roy, yeah, he's really on top of it. He's great. He's dynamic, what have you. I may not ever have actually encountered that specific person, but now they know of me just by virtue of doing that work. And I also have the benefit of having a well-established reputation at my law firm. So when there's an opportunity that comes, I can run with it instead of them saying, oh, I don't know, that sounds like a good opportunity, but maybe we need to bring someone else in to take care of it because we're not sure if Roy can handle it, which I've seen happen to people, unfortunately. So what I would say is, in terms of being very intentional, think about where you are projecting your branding, as it were, whether that's substantive, whether that's, you know, issues that you of interest or issues that you want to focus on, because the impact can vary depending on how you do it. It's not good enough to just say, oh, I reached X number of thousands of people with something that I posted on social media, if the people who are most impactful on what you want to accomplish are either not seeing it or don't think it's relevant to what they need to know about you, right? So that's where that intentionality piece comes in, I think, particularly for law firm lawyers, early in the career, but also later on, because then it becomes even more important to create that outside presence and raise the profile, right? But do it in the right way, where it's not just people know you, but they think of the right things when they think of it.
Mm-hmm. I love that. You know, the thinking about the sort of two-pronged piece of, it's not, you know, folks have seen me speak about branding before, know that I try to evoke Beyonce at all times. And so, you know, the Destiny's Child conundrum is this. It is, if you say that you're Beyonce and someone else is saying that you're Kelly or Michelle, pick the one that you like the best or not, right? Then it's a problem, because you need to get to at least whoever the middle one is. So I would use Beyonce and I would use Michelle. Don't get mad at me if you're a Michelle fan. I like everybody else, it's fine. But the point is that right in the middle, we want to meet around Kelly and strive for Beyonce at all times, right? It can never be that you say X and you're not, and you're just like, fine, I'm still saying that I'm that. You have to work to getting there. Like, that's that excellence piece of it, and being strategic. And I love using Beyonce as a person to talk about that, because she does. She practices, she does all these things in order to up her game with strategy. And that's what we're talking about. Speaking of Beyonce, Sonia, how have you strategically built your brand?
So I love the Beyonce analogy. And Paula, you may recall that you and I and a few others did an article a few years ago on working on with an executive coach. And we did a panel on that topic. And actually one of the references in the article was, you know, Beyonce is naturally talented, to be sure, but Beyonce's dad also had her running on a treadmill in high heels while singing so that she could, you know, practice. And so we all need coaching. We all need practice. And so that intentionality that Roy was talking about, it's day by day. You know, there's so many overnight successes that actually were 20, 30, 40 years in the making. And, you know, relationships and brands are built slowly overnight. And so the posting on social media and things like that are great. And I think I'm pretty well known for being someone who posts a lot on social media and speaking at events and things like that. But what is not known is that probably about half the people in this call I've had a one-on-one conversation with. You know, half an hour conversation here, hour-long conversation there, you know, email here, text message there. So there's, I think going back to Stephanie's point, there's the showy piece of it, which is sort of the marketing, but the reputational piece, that's built, I think, quietly, you know, day to day, real conversations with people when there's no camera around, there's no social media around. And so doing that and putting the time, the consistency, day by day. I talk to probably 10 people every day. Now, obviously, I'm a recruiter, so maybe 6 of those people, I'm interviewing them for jobs. But there's a certain number of people, and I'm intentional about who haven't I talked to in a while? Who would I like to talk to? And I think especially during the pandemic, it's so important to reach out to people and say, you know, hey, let's schedule a call. You know, how are you doing? How have you been managing? And I've heard someone say that, you know, during this last year, we may not be all in the same boat, but we're all in the same river, you know, so we're all from our various places dealing with the pandemic in different ways. For some people, it's illness in the family. For some people, you know, it's job insecurity. You know, for some people, you know, it's the virtual schooling and dealing with that. And so no matter who the person is, they could be a, you know, Fortune 10 general counsel all the way to, you know, a first-year law student. There's no one who has been unaffected over the last year. And so again, just being that person who's going to reach out, and again, nobody's watching, no social media, no anything, just, hey, how are you doing? How are you managing? How are you doing today? You know, what's going on with you, you know, right now? All of these little quiet, you know, conversations with people, you know, it makes a difference. They're little seeds that you're planting, you know, over time. So I think that it's important to do sort of all of these things. And I love what Stephanie said about the personal piece, because yes, I do want people to know, you know, very specific things about me, but I think you also have to figure out what those pieces are of yourself that you're willing to share with other people. And I try to weave those things in through my articles, you know, my panels, you know, like Paula, you know, I'm a fanatic for Prince, you know, also like Paula, I'm a huge Hamilton fan. And for a while there, no matter what the article was, it was how Hamilton can help you negotiate your comp. It's like those two things have nothing to do with each other, but you know what? This is the article you're going to get from me. So it's literally one of these things where I'll get on the phone with like you know, the general counsel of 3M, and he's like, oh, how's Malcolm? To be clear, Malcolm is my cat, and he features very prevalently in a lot of my social media. Or, oh, you know, how's Malcolm doing now that Pookie's on the scene? Pookie is my puppy. So I've been posting a lot on social media about sort of the battles between my old grizzled cat and my young frisky puppy. And so, you know, you forget sometimes that people are looking at those things too. And in fact, that's what distinguishes you sometimes from all of the other people who do the exact same thing that you do. I don't claim to be the greatest recruiter in the world. I am far from only the recruiter in the world, but I'm probably one of the few recruiters who, off the top of your head, if you had to name one, you could name me, and you can name some things that you know about me, which is, hey, Sonia likes Hamilton, Sonia likes Prince, you know, Sonia has a cat, also a dog, you know, so those personal touches sometimes can be the tiebreaker between you and another person who, in all fairness, could probably do the exact same job that you can do. So again, starting with, like Roy said, start with your foundation, start with your substance, start with your own organization. You cannot export a brand that does not exist. You cannot tell the world I am the greatest X person. Everybody in your firm is like, I don't know about that. So you got to start inward and work out from there, and be intentional about it, but don't expect overnight results. The old saying is, when's the best time to plant a tree? Well, 20 years ago was the best time to plant a tree, but the second best time to plant a tree is today. So, get started today. Get started with the names that you see on the screen. You can connect with the people here on LinkedIn. You can, schedule conversations with people. And one day, 5 years from now or 10 years from now, someone that you met on this call, could be the reason you get a job or the reason you get on a board.
I love that. Love that visioning. We all win the lotto together. Anyway, so I'm going to, again, take dealer's choice, and I'm going to ask a question specifically to Neysa, because I think it hits right in your bailiwick and someone asked this. The question is, how do you begin pivoting from law student to lawyer while you're still in law school? And given the work that you have done with law students and mentoring and less of the organizational work, I thought this would be a great question for you.
Thank you. By the way, Sonia, so many words of wisdom there. That was great. I was jotting stuff down. So hopefully everybody else was as well. You start building relationships in law school. Let's start there. Those people that were leadership in the Latin American Law Student Association and the BALSAs, those are people that I ended up working with later on multiple boards. So your reputation and, sort of the building quietly and the work that you put in starts in law school. It starts in, hey, let's put together this program for LALSA, and people are relying on you. And so your reputation is built by doing the work and showing people that you can be a resource and that you do want to build community. And then so you can, from there, you continue to not just do great work at your job, but also be vocal about causes that you care about. That has helped me a lot in my career in terms of, I've joined bar associations that care about increasing diversity in the legal profession, because that's something that I care about, and I want to join others in those causes. So that's what I would say. In addition to doing a great job at your job, definitely become involved in things that you care about, and then, what we were talking about earlier, be vocal about that on social media and otherwise. One of the things that has helped me without necessarily being intentional about it, but I was just passionate about it, was something I mentioned earlier about Puerto Rico issues and things that I would post on social media that I felt people needed to know about. I was then very actively involved with the Puerto Rico Task Force of the City Bar and the Puerto Rico Task Force of the Hispanic National Bar. And that led me to become Senior Policy Advisor on Puerto Rico issues for Congresswoman Nydia Velázquez. So I would just say that as you're being intentional about building your brand, sometimes it's just good to be vocal about the things that you are passionate about, and that will help you to land where you're not even thinking at the moment you're going to land. So that's what I would say.
So true, because people think we are lawyers or law students, we have to be robots and only talk about the law things that we do. And that's not how the world works, right? And that's not how people work. And in fact, like Sonia was mentioning, yes, I know her cats, yes, I know Hamilton, and people who know me and have followed me on social media or know me generally know that I love Idris Elba, like, right? Like it's just a part of who I am, deal with it. My husband has to, so everybody else should too, right? And that just makes me, human. And it's important, right, for us to incorporate the humanity of branding, and vulnerability and authenticity is a really key piece of this. And I want to kind of focus us back to where we are, our umbrella, even though we've been talking about this whole thing, and go to Stephanie to talk about specifically using brand building for business development. Talk to me about how you've done that.
Yeah, so listen, I do not believe necessarily that you should ever have to sell yourself if you're actually doing what you're supposed to be doing. People say you should have an elevator pitch, and you should be able to talk about in lay people's terms what you do, but what turns people off is when you start selling them, right? So like when and there's nothing worse on LinkedIn when you send it, a connection request and then right away you get pitched for something. So relationships are the heart of everything. It's how you get a new job. It's how you get a volunteer position, how you get added to a board. It's the key to success, in my opinion. I have never, ever once had to write a post or sell myself in any way because people know what I stand for and what I do. So in terms of in terms of how your personal brand fits in with business development, if you are doing the things you're supposed to be doing, like we spoke about, and Sonia said something very important that I would tell you, which is giving without any expectation of getting anything, right? So like, I'll give you an example. One of my clients was taking her kids to New York City for the weekend. And I live in New York City. And she said to me, do you have any recommendations for places I can take my kids to brunch? Well, guess what I did? I sent her a bunch of places, right? Lawyers and everybody should be doing the same thing, right? I've seen this happen, I'm going to Positano back when we could, could you send me some and even without being asked, if a client says to you that kind of thing, go out of your way, helping someone get an interview. You can't, for a job, someone who's down and out, or not even someone's, a family, someone, looking for a job. It is those times where you go out of your way to help people that will benefit you immensely down the line. Okay. So relationships, people do business with people they know and like. And another thing I want to say, those people with whom you were in the trenches, whether it was your summer associate years, your first years out of law school, in law school, all of those things, those are your formative years. Those are relationships that can't be underestimated. Lawyers with whom I work consistently continue to get referrals from those relationships. And by the way, for me too, I worked at a firm that rhymes with Pullivan and Romwell, and the relationships I built there was like, no one, that you don't know what that was like unless you were there, and we have this bond. Lawyer, you can't underestimate those bonds. So even if you haven't talked to someone in 10, 15 years, reach out to people. People will still refer things to you. So maintain relationships. Even if you haven't talked to people, you can still reconnect with them. So my point with all of this is that you never should feel uncomfortable. You never should feel uncomfortable because you're never going to have to sell yourself if you're doing things right. Okay. And checking in with people is okay as well. Yeah, I'm sorry, Paul. I feel like you're Bob Barker with the little microphone.
I'm always going to be Bob Barker with the little microphone. Don't worry. So, and that was excellent. And I think encapsulated what you said in relationships, referrals, recommendations, and being a resource in the chat. I think that those are important points. Roy, talk to me about where the money resides and how you use your brand in order to business develop.
Sure. So piggybacking on what a little bit on what Stephanie said, it's the relationships, right? So it's going to be the people that know you, know what you do, and think well of you, right? And it's interesting for me, I didn't start my career out doing environmental law, right? I started out my career, I was actually a general commercial litigator and also did intellectual property litigation. So the people that knew me in the trenches didn't know me as doing environmental law, but they did know me as doing litigation. And so I had to put a lot of effort into associating myself, kind of like how Sonia did when she transitioned from, immigration and employment to recruiting and whatnot to, environmental. But the interesting thing though, is that largely a lot of times for lawyers, yes, people want kind of that subject matter expertise that you have, but if you have a general reputation with people as just being good at what you do and being well regarded by the people who you've encountered, and that could be opposing counsel in another case that you were in, that could be a client who you didn't even work with directly but saw your work and then went somewhere else, and now where they are, they're like, hey, well, we should work with this person because they did a good job at I saw they did a good job at the last. And so for me, where the money resides is really just all of those people that you directly and indirectly have a touch with as you're doing that personal branding exercise of, putting the article together, speaking on something, or just doing the nuts and bolts of doing legal work. All of those touches are another potential source of the money, either directly or indirectly. And so for me, it's always just remembering that all of those people have that power. It can be, for example, I use personal story. It can be a friend that I met at my kid's daycare, right? Where it's not even a lawyer. This person's actually a teacher, and they knew someone who worked for a company locally and just happened to be talking like, oh, my friend is so stressed out, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, oh, really? What's the issue? And they specifically, they didn't tell me the details, but I said, well, I'm a lawyer, right? So if they have any general questions, I can at the very least point them to somebody that can help them if I can't do it. And it turned out it was something that was actually right in my wheelhouse. So, the only reason they even engaged with me in that conversation is because in other times, I was just pleasant and we had conversation and chat, and she knew that I was a lawyer, right? She didn't know environmental law. She didn't know any of those things, but it was like, okay, he's pleasant. He's a nice person. He seems genuine, what have you. I won't feel bad if I put my friend in touch with him, right? That kind of thing. I don't feel like I'm taking a risk. And I think
feel like you're pleasant. You said pleasant. I was like, you know what? You absolutely are pleasant.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Right.
Neysa,
so, yeah, go for it.
Someone had mentioned in the chat and said that they were going to ask you about how you have sort of pivoted from place to place, particularly government and all these other things. And then they were like, and then she answered it, which was wonderful. I want to key in on this sort of thinking about branding, about the business of you. So the business development of you, right? So thinking of your, Neysa Inc., right? And you don't know what the next chapter of Neysa Inc. is going to be. How do you then move from one thing to the other and shift your brand in order to do so? Because I think some folks might be like, oh, I'm not an entrepreneur, I'm not selling things, or I'm not there yet in terms of this. And everybody can align with having to do what Stephanie said before, kind of, think there's a straight path and there's like hills and valleys and all of those pieces. And your career has been that, and you've been successful in all the different places. And so how have you business developed to pivot to different spaces in your career?
So that's a good question and a lot of self-reflection there. So first of all, I have been committed to do the best that I could at every single job. That's something that I echo from others who have already said that. But in the process, I have always been connected to the community in one way, shape, or form. And that always allowed me to build relationships, learn from others, be mentored along the way, just be exposed to people that I otherwise wouldn't be. And it was mostly through bar association work. I'll say it over and over again. That the people that I've met through bar associations, the people that have helped me along the way, have invested in me because they see that I've invested in myself, right? So it all starts with you. It all starts with how much commitment you have to moving forward. And so how have I been able to do it? I guess some of it I would say is luck. But I would say overall that you also have to be willing to take risks, and you have to trust your gut. And I'm fortunate enough that, because, for example, I don't have any children, I can take more risks than other people could. For example, some people can't leave New York and move down to DC the way that I was able to. So I would say, like, really focus on learning who you are, think about the things that move you, sort of think about, is this a risk I'm willing to take right now? And if not, how can I continue to, personally develop so that I'm confident enough to say, if that doesn't work out, I know I'm going to make it somewhere else because I'm going to continue to work on myself. And so that's how I would say that, some of the tips that have helped me along the way in shifting from one to the other.
I love that. I just take risk and trust your gut. And then I just pivot for your passion, personal development. Right, like that. I think those are some key takeaways. Sonia, talk to me about your business development and how. So your business is people, right? And so how do you people and get more people while you're peopling with your personal brand?
No, absolutely. And I love what Nisa said. And, as a recruiter, I talk to people all the time who are afraid to take risks because they're afraid that they're going to ruin their career. And I swear, I talk to 3 people a day who are afraid they're going to ruin their career, when a career, I think Stephanie mentioned earlier, that's a 40, 50-year proposition. And right? And there's going to be a lot of twists and turns. And I personally have ruined my career on at least 3 or 4 separate occasions. But what I have found is that careers are actually a lot harder to ruin than you might think. Actually, as long as you don't die, almost everything else you can come back from. Obviously try not to get disbarred, try not to go to jail, but you can reinvent yourself over the course of a 40, 50-year career. So don't be afraid to take some risks. What's the worst that'll happen? And frankly, you can take more risks when you know your stuff, when you know your craft, when you've got a great brand, when you have a great network. My personal branding story, my favorite story about myself is there's a general counsel who I used to do work for when I was a junior lawyer. And then she started giving me more work. I changed law firms stupidly like 3 times. She kept sending work to me every time I changed law firms. Then one day I called her up and said, I'm a recruiter now. And she was like, oh, okay. She's like, well, I've never really worked with a recruiter before, but I do have a position and I'll let you do that search for me. And I did. It was one of my first searches. And then she said, you know what? I think I'm about ready to retire. So find a replacement for me. And I did that. And then she was like, well, find me a new job. And I did find her a new job and put her in a new job, and then did it again and put her in another new job. And now she continues to be a client, not just in terms of legal search, but other corporate searches and things as well. And I feel very confident based on the nature of our long-term relationship of mutual trust, that if I called her up next week and said, you know what? Now I'm selling pencils. Hear me out, Kathy. Hear me out. Pencils. They're making a big comeback. And she'd be like, really? Pencils? I hadn't really thought about it, but I'll buy some pencils from you. And so I think when you build a relationship of trust with people, they will be there with you on that journey because they trust your judgment, that you would not sort of lead them into the wrong thing. And so I think that for me has always been how I've built business. Now, I can't say that I never pitch. I pitch all the time, but you know what? I pitch with the inside track. And there's a big difference between pitching and pitching with the inside track. And 9 times out of 10, I'm not just another random, vendor in the contest. I'm pitching with the inside track, so that if I'm on a call with the other people who are pitching, the person who's the decider may be texting me, make sure to ask this, make sure not to ask that. So that is really sort of the difference. We all are auditioning all the time. We're all pitching all the time. You just don't even realize it. The person you're talking to may not even realize it. That something that you're doing, something that you're saying is sticking in their head, and it's going to make them come back to you at a later point. So, be conscious of the fact that even if what you're talking about has nothing to do with anything that you could remotely think would connect to something else, be conscious of being a good person, be conscious of being a helpful person, and you never know when that is going to sort of come back over time. The other quick story that I will tell is, I think it's particularly important for women and people of color to think about the ways that they can connect with other people to build those relationships. And that's not always the easiest thing to do when you don't look like the decision makers generally. And no, you don't have to go learn how to play golf unless you want to, but you can, with a little intentionality and thanks to the internet, figure out what you do, have in common with someone that you think you might not. When I was a junior lawyer, there was this client who seemed to just hate all of us. And why do you keep sending us business just to torture us? You appear to hate us. And one day it was my turn to do work for this guy. And he was yelling at me about my incompetence. And I was nodding and saying, absolutely. And then he said something. And then I mumbled under my breath, touch of evil. And then he stopped and he said, what do you know about touch of evil? What are you talking about, touch of evil? And I was like, well, the quote you just said is from Orson Welles. It's touch of evil. Completely changed our relationship. He turns out this guy was the biggest Orson Welles fan in the world, and I am too. Next thing you know, I am now the relationship partner for this client. Everybody's like, yeah, he likes you now. Yeah, you talk to him now. So business development and personal branding are so connected because, I think as Stephanie said before, people have choices. People want to do business with people that they like. And if they can find a way to like you and you can find a way to like them, you will never, again, you may have to pitch, but you'll pitch with the inside track.
Love it. So speaking of the inside track, for those of you who are attorneys, I'm sure you want to know the inside track on getting your CLE credit. And that's what I'm here for. Hold please. The code is this SS, that's Sam 3385. Again, it's SS 3385. You'll need that code. So take a screenshot, take a picture so that you'll remember it, that it's SS 3385. And yes, I used to do phone recordings. So anyway, I knew already when I started and put this all together that I was going to feel like we not have enough time because that's just the way it always is. And I love that pretty much a lot of what I wanted to get to you has been incorporated in some of the responses already. But there's one question that I love to ask when it comes to branding, and I like each of you to respond to, and I'm going to keep you to your 90-second snippets on this one. And that is, tell me about a mistake that you've seen someone or yourself has made in terms of your brand. And if you can incorporate some of the best practices for getting out of it. So I'll give you 2 minutes and then we're going to go to questions. So those of you who are on, I want to see what your questions are because this is the time to get these experts to tell you what you need to know. I'm going to start with Roy. Go for it.
So I actually alluded to this in one of the earlier things I said, which is not being intentional about where you're projecting your brand, right? And what you're sending out. So mistakes I've seen made, one of the biggest mistakes is that people sometimes mistake kind of exposure generally to kind of positive branding in some way, right? So just because you can reach a large number of people with something that you put out there, if you're not intentional about what you're putting out there, it's not going to have any of the intended effect. Lots of people see it, but lots of people see lots of things and they can dismiss it and move on. Or even worse, it's something that makes them think of something negative about kind of either your judgment or what it is that you're actually trying to get across. So I've seen that mistake several times. The beauty of that one is that that's pretty easy to fix because it really is just like many people have said, a question of consistency. So if you pivot and you start to adjust how you're projecting that, whatever that information is out there, you maintain that for a bit of time, like it will completely turn around because people only remember the last few things they saw from you, unless it's something just, absolutely horrible, devastating, which I trust that none of you would ever do something like that.
Never do that.
I haven't even seen it myself. So
that would never happen.
So I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Roy. And I know I'm going totally out of order, but life is like that. Stephanie, you're up next.
Okay. And thank you, Paula, for having us today and for Seyfarth for doing this great series. Okay, so here's what I would say, right? People say, that I put myself out there, and I will say that, yes, I do, and not enough people do. So the biggest mistake I see is that people aren't confident enough, or they're nervous about either how it will be received when they put themselves out there in terms of their brand, or they don't know what to say. Or they're not sure if their employer will be okay with it, or they're sort of trying to figure out the right mix between, well, will my employer frown upon me trying to build my brand? Will they think I'm trying to get a new job? Am I supposed to be promoting their content versus my own, etc.? And I would say, you own your brand. You will not, gone are the days where you're staying at a job your entire career. If you're a lawyer and you want to make partner and stay at your firm, that is not necessarily the majority anymore. Many of you will choose to leave your firms, go on to do some amazing other things. So just plan ahead. Many of you are not looking for a job, and a job will fall in your lap, or someone is going to call you about an amazing opportunity. So prepare your brand before you're even ever looking for something. And, you may get plucked for a job or maybe an opportunity for a board or whatever it may be. So, or you may want to be a thought leader, and you should feel confident enough to be able to do that. Many people just don't know how to start doing it. So I would say, you are not under any obligation whatsoever to be tied to your employer unless you've signed something. Obviously look at your social media policies, look at your employment agreement, all of those things, but you should be building your brand, particularly in this digital world. So my advice is to just have the confidence to do it and figure out what you want to stand for. It could be in your industry. I have a friend who wanted to be move over into the D&I space, the diversity and inclusion space. And so she started posting about issues in that area. And then she got a job because people saw she was doing that. And then she got asked to be a moderator for a panel. So find the causes that you feel passionate about, and then you'll find your purpose. So your purpose and your brand are directly related, and your passions.
Love it. Purpose, brand, passion. And
yeah,
now I've
Lisa
decided.
said something before. What was it? If you don't believe in yourself, no one else will believe. Like, what was that line? Because Paula didn't put it in the comments, and I thought you were going
All right,
to.
I only typed with one hand. I'm
I
sorry.
know. What was that line? I want to write it down.
What'd you say? Do you remember what you said, Nasa?
Something about, like,
No, I thought it was Sonia who said word to word. What did I say?
like, if you don't believe in you, others. It was something so good. It was like I wanted to brand
We're gonna
it.
run back the
No one
video.
else will?
We're gonna run back the
Something like
video.
that. If
and then
anyone
say
knows
that
what she
it's gonna happen.
said, put it in the comments. Okay.
Okay, so now I'm going to just go directly questions to folks. I have questions in the queue, and I'm going to ask it to the person I think should answer. We have exactly 8 minutes. Let's think about that as we respond. The first question is this: how do you share and highlight both your passions and your career without confusing your personal brand? And I'm actually going to key that to Sonia, because you do this really well. So.
When I started incorporating my authentic self and my personal life into my professional life, I got exponentially more successful. The reality is that there were a lot of immigration lawyers and there were a lot of recruiters, but there was only one me. And when I started letting people know how I actually talk and not putting on my white voice, when I started sharing what I'm actually interested in, what I actually care about, when I woke up one day and realized, you know what, I'm an acquired taste. I'm not for everybody and everybody's not for me. And that's okay. I'm not trying to get everybody's work. I'm not trying to have a relationship with everybody. I'm not trying to be best friends with everybody. It is okay for me to be who I am. And that's going to work for some people. And that's not going to work for some other people, but we'll all be all right. And so going back to that point about, not worrying about, okay, well, what's my employer going to think? Well, I'm just going to assume nobody is a horrible person. If you're a horrible person, then no, you should not be incorporating any of your personal life into anything. You should try to keep the horribleness under wraps. But if you're merely a person who maybe likes something different than somebody else likes, wise minds can disagree, then you should feel confident in incorporating that. And you know what? If your employer doesn't like it, maybe you shouldn't be working for them. Maybe your values are not aligned. Maybe you should go work someplace else. If Hydra Struggles came to me right now and said it was over, I'd be like, then me and my LinkedIn account is out, because you know what? Everything else you can keep, right? I got 11,000 plus LinkedIn followers. So it's like, you know what? That's fine, because to me, these are projects that we're working on together. There's no indentured servitude. There's no lifetime. We're doing this project together. My brand aligns with your brand for right now. But when it's time to go, me and LinkedIn is out, and I'm gonna start all over again someplace else.
You actually just answered two questions actually at the same time, because somebody said, how do I fit my employer's profile or separate them and be a parallel path? And you literally just answered that question perfectly. Thank you, Sonia. Roy, how do you amplify your diversity in building your brand?
That's a great question. So one thing I did not mention, I failed to mention because I was so focused on the fact that I'm in my car when I introduced myself, is that I'm also the chair of my firm's diversity, equity, inclusion committee. And so one of the things that I spend a lot of time doing internally and externally is raising awareness and also pushing forward various initiatives that we're doing at the firm to increase the diversity, the inclusiveness of the firm. The way that you do that, I think, is most easily done by being active, like Neysa described, right? Identifying the organizations that you're passionate about. It's one thing to make social media posts, LinkedIn, wherever, about issues that are significant to you, but it speaks even speaks larger when you're actively engaged in valuable work in collaboration with others who are well respected, well regarded, to pursue those efforts. And so if you're making a post about an activity that you hosted, that you put on with an organization, something you spoke on, or something writing you contributed to on diversity issues, that's something that's very easy to incorporate into your branding. And it also shows traits that translate to the work you do as a lawyer, right? If it's writing and you're a litigator, then anything you write is going to carry weight, right? If it's speaking engagements and you're a litigator, again, that oral advocacy, you're showing, look, I can be put in front of clients and do well because I speak in front of large groups of people regularly about these important diversity issues. And you also have credibility if you want to approach your organization or others to address certain issues on diversity because you've done the work, right? And so that's a very important part of the branding. It's a way of not just talking about it, but showing that you are actually about it, using social media as one way to do that.
Don't just talk about it, be about it. Right. I'm feeling very like Ron Isley connecting from the verses. And so I'm saying old men things, that Black men in my life, things that I've, anyway, it's a long story. So someone asked a question about how do you go from having been on the mommy track to getting back and branding yourselves again? And I want to take that question and just say very quickly, being a parent has so many skills that are involved in it that you can amplify. It is amazing. Multitasking, patience, excellence in terms of time management, managing limited resources for the benefit of littles. It is such a skill set. And I think oftentimes people think of it as a detriment, and it is not. So number one, it is focusing on the fact that it is a benefit to your brand that you have been able to take parenting and utilize that, whether you took time off or not, to amplify what you do. We do it better because of the fact that we have to do it in these ways. Whether you're parenting children or pets, it still takes a whole bunch of things to do in order to make it be done right. So I want you to shape the question and your perspective on it in positive, right? That's that vision that Neysa was talking about before when it comes to branding. If you think about it as like a womp womp, then it'll be womp womp, right? So make it so that it's not womp womp, and then talk about how great it has been, right? When you think about your elevator pitch, I have used parenting to amplify these skills, and these skills, and I will take that into my lawyering in this way, and this way, right? Connecting it, not taking away from it. So we have 2 minutes. I'm going to ask you in 30 seconds, each of you, to tell me one of your 17 takeaways. So pick one, and I'm going to ask you to take one, and Neysa, you're up first. 1, go.
Be authentic, be true to yourself, and show that to the world.
Love it. Stephanie, go.
This is so hard. Find your niche and be consistent. And if you're using social, which you should be, start today and do it really authentically.
Good. Sonia,
so
go.
hard.
Be intentional, be consistent, be authentic, be you.
Love it. Roy, go.
Going last is not fair. Also, commit yourself to the project, right, of your personal brand, because it is the one thing that you will be able to actively control and will contribute to you no matter what space you're in and no matter what you do down the road. So it's worth the time investment, the thought, and the effort.
Mm-hmm. My last point before we close is this. If you think you don't have a personal brand, you absolutely have one. And you need to do something about it and shape it and be strategic. So be strategic and not stagnant in building your personal brand. Everyone, your homework from today is to connect with us via LinkedIn and talk about the Belonging Project in your connection to us. We wish you strategy, we wish you power and passion, and we wish you taking care of yourself and remembering that you are all things. And thank you so much for joining us. Everyone have a wonderful rest of your day. Looking forward to connecting with you online. Bye all.